to talk about a seated forward bend or forward fold today. So if you have asthma or diarrhea, this is contraindicated. This pose is. If you have a back injury, it is recommended that you proceed with caution, or if you're not very familiar with the pose or familiar with your body, you should seek the help of a knowledgeable professional to assist you until you're feeling comfortable, or until recommended otherwise. So we're going to start off with a blanket. So you can kind of use the blanket like you would a block. They kind of have different levels, so depending on the thickness of your blanket, mine are pretty thin. So what this does is, if you watch, and if you haven't tried this, I would encourage you to try it. So start off just on your mat and then kind of relax. And so what happens if your hamstrings are tight is they pull on your pelvis, and then it tends to round your back. So I like to do this depending on in the class where I put this, or in my own personal practice where I put this. I might not need a blanket, or I might need to have a thicker blanket. Or if you don't have a blanket, you can double your mat over. You just pull it so it's doubled over. So sometimes I will use it thicker. And this is good too if your sit bones are sensitive, because you're going to pull anything extra out and be sitting right on those. Now, if you tried it on just the mat, then try it with a thin blanket down, and then try it with it rolled, and see what feels better for you. I feel like my spine is more properly aligned today this way. I did this pose the other day. I didn't need as much lift. So it kind of varies day to day and depends on what you've been doing. So we're going to pull the toes up. If you are very tight, you can always take another blanket, or you could use a towel and you can roll it and put it under your knees, depending on how big of a roll you need. This will help to keep your knees more comfortable and to help protect them from overextending, because we don't want them to go backwards, basically. So this pose has quite a big list of benefits. Traditional texts say that it cures disease, so do with that what you want to, that information. It's just kind of interesting to know, but it's good for stress. You know, depending on you, it could be good for menopausal or menstrual issues, and good for high blood pressure, but it's good for calming the brain, relieving some stress, stretching out those hamstrings, those calves. So we're going to roll the shoulders down and back, bring the belly button towards the spine. We're going to lift the sternum or clavicle as we roll the shoulders open, and I'm pulling my toes towards my knees, just like in a standing forward fold. Then we're going to pull the kneecaps up to isometrically activate the quads, because we want to create a stretch in the hamstrings, right? And so when we do this, if you're tight, I would use a strap. If you're not warmed up, the strap goes right around the ball of the feet. Now we want to keep the shoulder joints plugged in also. We're going to be stretching the back, the hamstrings, a little bit of the shoulders. So I am engaging my core, so I'm engaging my back and my belly, and I'm pulling the vertebral borders of my scapula, so the inside edge, the side against the spine, the medial edge, towards my spine. So I'm engaging my rhomboids and my middle trap. My rotator cuff muscles are engaged. My kneecaps are pulling up, and I'm bending at the hip. So I'm not bending here. We lead with the chest open, so we kind of lead with the sternum. Not that we're jutting our head back. We want to keep everything lined up. So sometimes let me rephrase that. Often what happens is you'll have people that, okay, and they're here. This is not very, you don't want to be here. I wouldn't grab the tops of the feet, because you see what happens to the shoulder? We go into medial rotation. That's not opening the chest. That's the opposite of what we want to do. So roll the shoulders down and back, pull the toes up, activate the quads isometrically. So isometric, remember, contraction, but they're not moving. And so we bend at the hip. Now if you can't reach, you can be here. You can use a strap. I like straps. But I'm going to show you, now my back is going to be too rounded. But if you're going to grab your feet, you want to grab the outside edge. Because you see how that changes the whole forearm? That rotation of the forearm changes the whole shoulder. Right, me. So that's basically it. We're going to basically contract all the inner groin muscles, so the hip adductors, because we don't want the legs just splaying out. So we roll the thighs lightly in, immediately, pull the toes up. Make sure we're not overextending the knees. So we're going to engage our pelvic floor muscles, so we're aware of our coccyx and our sacrum, and all of those are kind of grounding us down through the sit bones. And then we're going to fold. Now if you are working in this pose and you're here, say you're here, keeping the shoulders plugged in, you can have your arms straight, you know, if that feels better. But you don't want to be rounding your back. Nice flat back. Bending at the hip joint, just like in a forward fold. So as things start to give, if you're just warming up, you just walk the hands forward and lengthen a little bit more. Other options are to do a wide leg version, where you're engaging a little bit more of the abductors of the hips. So that's a wider variation. As with everything, there's variations, but this is the basic seated forward fold.